All right, welcome to Heroes and Droids, your guide to movies and TV shows about superheroes, sci-fi, Disney, and action. From Marvel to DC, from Star Wars to Star Trek, from James Bond to the Fast and Furious, we will review the theatrical films and streaming delights you care about most. And yes, tonight we are reviewing Thor, Love and Thunder!
Okay, I'm out.
You might be able to figure out my favorite part of the movie. All right, I am your host, Doc Ryder, and joining me tonight are the crew, starting off with Christopher Slattery. He is the SLATTMAN. How you doing, sir?
I'm good. I'm a little terrified of that little goat now, though.
Imagine stepping on that in the middle of the night.
Man. Imagine a cat while carrying her, like just attacking it over and over again.
I can. All right, also joining us is award-winning filmmaker Christopher G. Moore. How you doing, sir?
Sorry, you caught me in the middle of me bowing down to the God of Dumplings. Sorry,
the God of Dumplings. Yes. Oh my God, that was
bow, God of Dumplings.
Wow, God of Dumplings.
Oh my! And also joining us, comic book artist and host of every Decades of Horror that we have, Mr. Chad Hunt. How you doing, sir?
I give myself a 5 out of 5 stars.
5 out of 5 stars.
And my favorite scene is yesterday.
I
don't know why.
I don't know what you're saying, but that's awesome, sir. Thank you. All right, we are here. We are here to review Thor: Love and Thunder. We're going to start off giving our first impressions. Those will be spoiler-free. And then we'll dive into a discussion. We will get into spoilers, and we might even have some Easter eggs and such. Yeah, Mr. Moore? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. All right. And then we'll wrap things up. You had me scared there for a second. Then we'll wrap things up with our final thoughts, our score, 1 to 5, and our favorite scene. And of course, we hope you enjoy not only this review, but many others that we have on the site. And if you enjoy them, we hope that you'll hit the like, the subscribe, and share with a friend. It will do wonders for us. And of course, we want to hear your comments down below. Let's get these going. Let's look at the CAD. Thor: Love and Thunder.
Pick a
Available in theaters beginning July 8, 2022. Directed by Taika Waititi, written by Taika Waititi and Jennifer Caton Robinson. Based on the Marvel Comics by Stan Lee and Jason Aaron. What do you think of that, Chad? Jason Aaron. The cast includes Chris Hemsworth, Natalie Portman, Christian Bale, Tessa Thompson, Taika Waititi, Russell Crowe, Jamie Alexander, Chris Pratt, Dave Bautista, Karen Gillan, Palm Clementif. Is that how you say it? Sean Gunn, Vin Diesel, Bradley Cooper, and Karen L. Dyer, the last one playing a young gentleman named Axel. So I figured he deserved to be included. Synopsis is: Thor enlists the help of Valkyrie, Korg, and his ex-girlfriend, Jane Foster, to fight Gorr the God Butcher, who intends to make the gods extinct. Not instinct. Instinct is really weird. Extinct.
Basic instinct.
Yeah,
instinct
does not work.
Why doesn't he just say he intends to kill all the gods? Why didn't he just put all that? That's what it means. All right. I'm an idiot. Thank you very much. All right, let's get into this. SLATTMAN, sir.
Man, nobody jumped into
nobody defended me at all. Nobody. What is your first impression, sir?
Okay, so I have to preface what I'm about to say with, I think this is the second best Thor movie they've made. I think it is better than the first one and far superior to the Dark World. However, it doesn't really touch Ragnarok. It's a fun movie. It is an enjoyable time, but there are some performances that kind of felt phoned into me, and there's some utilization and writing choices, I guess, that kind of feel half-baked or questionable to me. And we can get into the spoilers, but what's really good in this movie is kind of outweighs those and makes it a very enjoyable film. Chris Hemsworth. I really enjoyed Chris Hemsworth in this. Christian Bale was probably the best part of the movie, and the scene with all the gods was was fun and enjoyable. And I even though the kind of the big joke was kind of ruined thanks to the previews for that scene, it still got a good chuckle out of me, and I really enjoyed how it played out. There's Taika Waititi's his comedy style kind of resonates with me, so I feel like I laughed a lot more than other people in the theater specifically. But yeah, I think it was a fun movie. It was a good movie. And it was a fun movie to end phase 4 on, if the internet is correct. But it doesn't really reach the heights that Ragnarok reached.
That hurts. All right, that's your first impression, Christopher G. Moore.
I agree with what Chris is saying. It's I don't think it holds a candle to Ragnarok. I think Ragnarok's a much better it's a better spelled out story, I guess, film wise. Although I think this has more laughs than Ragnarok does, because there's a lot more of Taika Waititi in this. There's definitely, I mean, there's so many bits, and I heard that like his original cut was like 4 hours, but he said it was a lot of jokes that were not as funny as the jokes that are in it. And I will say I laughed every time hopefully Doc won't press that button again, but I did laugh every time. It's not funny when Doc does it, but it's funny when Taika Waititi does it.
Oh man.
Every time you'd hear the goats, I did laugh. And there was a lot of bits of humor and levels of absurdity and just that sort of level of dialogue you would expect from Taika Waititi when it has characters, when they're also a lot of times calling themselves out in the midst of a dialogue scene. And I think Gorr as a villain is probably one of the best villains in MCU, mainly because of just his menace and his reasons for doing it. I could understand that.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I don't think I could understand that with Thanos. I'm not sure I could understand that with any other villain, but he's one of the first villains who, like, you know what? I see where he's coming from. And he was creepy and scary on a level that I haven't seen any other sort of MCU villain. I mean, we had some horror stuff, of course, in Multiverse of Madness, but this guy was just, I mean, when he's talking to those kids, it's like, oh, God, it's creepy AF. But yeah, I found it to be funny, but I don't know, there was moments that felt kind of scattered, and then other times I felt like we almost like missed some steps or something to the story. And I can't really put my finger on it, but I was entertained by it, and I loved a lot of the visuals. I love a lot of the callbacks to the original comics when it comes to even some of the outfits some of them wore in scenes. I love Jane Foster. I love seeing, Mighty Thor. And I hope there's ways for her to come back. Wink, wink. I enjoyed it. I thought it was, Zeus. I mean, that whole thing with Zeus, I think Russell Crowe was having a great time in that role. Yes. he even had the Greek accent down pat for it, and it worked really well. I was really entertained by that whole scene. And but yeah, I mean, again, Taika Waititi brings a sort of wild, weirdness to the MCU that makes his films stand out. And some people don't like that aspect of it sometimes, but I enjoyed it. I think this is definitely one of the more entertaining films. But story wise, it was a little bit scattered, and I think that's the only reason that it kind of puts it below Ragnarok for me. But I still enjoyed it. I think it's definitely one of the more enjoyable films in the MCU because, like the SLATTMAN, I like Taika Waititi's humor, and so I enjoyed a lot of those bits that I mean, even the Stormbreaker to bring sort of a sentience or whatever to a weapon. Or it was just like peek in. I mean, just the humor with that I don't think anybody else could really bring humor to a weapon like that. So yeah, I enjoyed it.
Chad, how you doing, Chad?
I'm good.
What is your first impression of Thor?
Well, when I first sat down to watch it, and it was sort of telling what the beginnings of Gorr and everything. I was in. That is one of the most heart-wrenching openings for a Marvel movie that I've seen in a long time. So I was in, and I thought that was going to like set the tone for the movie. With anybody that's read the comics, the God Butcher was a heavy story. So I felt like I was watching two different films. And I understand Taika Waititi does the comedy and he does that kind of thing. I don't know if that lent itself to Thor or the seriousness of the Gorr story. I know everybody digs Thor the way he is now, where he's more of a buffoon but I'm just used to Thor being this, he takes a mallet and he smashes trolls and ice giants and stuff like that, which, there was some of that in this movie. And I'm like Christopher too. I felt like there were huge chunks missing out of the story, where everything wasn't as fleshed out as it could have been. And the comedy seemed to come at the expense of the seriousness of the story. So I'm on the fence about it. There's parts that I loved about it, and then there's parts that I really, really didn't care for, which we'll get into in spoilers and everything. But so yeah, I'm on the fence about it.
On the fence. So my first impression is I absolutely love this movie. I agree that Ragnarok is better. I was wondering at first, but yeah, Ragnarok is a better film for a lot of reasons. One being Hulk. I mean, that was kind of the no-brainer. But this one is basically a fantasy comedy. That's all it is. And where I think everybody's kind of reaching for is that there are some tonal shifts in it that swing a little too far away.
Yeah.
But with the two different stories that we're getting, sewn together to make this, they both have very heavy elements. One of which I think gets totally thrown aside, with just like a mention, and then, it hardly feels like it made the impact that they intended. And I think that maybe some of that is lost, because you didn't feel it as much, and you should have. We'll get into what all that means in a little bit. But so I don't have as much. I don't know. I'm not a huge Thor comic fan. I like Thor and MCU much better. And I never got into the Mighty Thor comic or the God Butcher story. So, I mean, I'm aware of them. I know what they are. I've kind of like sampled, but then I went, eh. So it had nothing to live up to as far as that was concerned. So I was on the comedy ride and it was funny, and there are elements in this that have me rolling. The first of which, of course, are the goats. The goats alone had me going. But I don't know. There's a lot I love about this movie. I'll watch Thor Ragnarok over and over and over again. I don't know how many times I'll watch this one over again. So
Yeah.
There's that, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's dive into some spoilers and Mr. Moore, why don't we start off with some Easter eggs?
Okay. Well, first of all, of course, we get the first look at the Necro Sword, which actually in the comics came from the God of Symbiotes, but because Sony owns all the symbiote stuff, they had to sort of change it up a little bit for this. I don't know if did you guys recognize who the first guy that he kills, Rapu, is?
Mm-mm.
Played by Johnny Brew, who is Watiti's vampire co-actor from What We Do in the Shadows movie, and he shows up in the series as well. He's the guy that plays Deacon.
Oh, okay. I did not recognize him at all.
So again, he always has some of his cohorts in some of his projects, and I didn't recognize him either until I think someone on TikTok had asked him that question or something. So I thought that was kind of unique. Of course, we get the really great scene where we get to see Thor running, and we see him at different ages. The teenage version of Thor is actually wearing the comic accurate costume from the Kirby era run. Mm-hmm. Also, the really kid version, that's Tristan Hemsworth. That's his kid. And you're going to find out all their kids are in different parts of this movie.
Wow.
All the actors and some of the crew, even Taika Waititi's kids are in it. Let's see. The opening scene where we see Thor and he does that sort of Van Damme split. That outfit, his boots are actually the comic accurate boots from the Silver Age era of his outfit. The vest, of course, comes from sort of a Ravager costume. The shirt has the world tree on it, which in Norse mythology is the great tree at the center of the universe, containing all 9 of the worlds in Norse cosmology, in front of the Bifrost, which is kind of almost is a foreshadowing to later on when we see the statue with the Bifrost in the middle of its chest.
That costume he was wearing too was sort of, to me, based on the Eric Masterson version.
I was thinking the same thing.
The Thunderstrike, where he wore the vest and the boots and everything.
Yes,
so I thought
and
that
the other people are trying to say that it's also was it Big Trouble in Little China? There's almost a Big Trouble in Little China look to that as well. Let's see. In the comics, the alien girl prays for rain, and Thor answers. He investigates why the no other gods answers, and then he finds a lot of these gods have been slaughtered and hanging up. And actually, in the scene where he gets the distress call and there's all these pictures, one of those pictures is a callback to the actual comic book frame. Mm-hmm. So again, there's a lot of, regardless of people's issues with his story and how it goes away from the comics, there's a lot of comic book accurate frames that are taken straight from the comics in certain shots. The part where Jane Foster finds out the guy next to her is reading her book, and she points out like folding space and time. She does a bit where sticks a pin, through a piece of paper, which we saw in Stranger Things. But she actually mentions the 2 movies where she does the very same thing. She mentions Event Horizon and Interstellar, where they do the very same thing, where they take some kind of piece of paper and they stick a pin through it. So it's kind of funny. She's doing the very same thing. She's like, "Hey, have you seen both of those movies?" Probably one thing people won't notice in New Asgard, 2 of the streets are named after 2 of the writers. Of course, we got Aaron Avenue, named after Jason Aaron, who of course wrote stories that involved Gorr the God Butcher, as well as the Jane Foster as Mighty Thor. And then Simonson Street, named after Walter Simonson, who did some of the comics as well. Of course, we get a really cheesy ice cream shop called Infinity Cones with Thanos's Infinity Glove, except it has an ice cream in it. Of course, we get the return of the drama actors, if you remember from the previous. Yes. We get Sam Neill, Liam Hemsworth, and Matt Damon returning to sort of act out what happened in the previous Thor story. And of course, we get Melissa McCarthy, who said up and down she was not in this film, but like everything we know, people are lying when they say they're not. And she returns as Hela, and they get this really sort of really funny reenactment of things with really bad like theatrical versions of things that normally have special effects.
And Ben Falcone's in it too. Yeah, I guess you were going to say that. Sorry.
Did you? That's okay. Did you guys recognize the tour guide that's talking about the broken Mjolnir? The tour guide is Daryl, who's from Thor's former roommate.
Oh no!
From the Thor short films. So now he's truly canon. Evidently, he lost that place and he had to work at New Asgard for some reason. So maybe Thor got him a job there.
Hooked him up.
So I think it's funny that we get that character, that sort of Easter egg type character. When Thor goes to the distress call that Lady Sif put out, he sees her and her arm has been cut off, which actually in the comics Thor had his arm cut off, and so they kind of changed that up. And also her outfit, which her helmet and red outfit are very comic book accurate to her character. And also the when Thor tries to impress Jane Foster when he sees her as Mighty Thor, he has this really golden outfit. That's actually more of like the Walter Simonson version of the outfit from Thor. So that's kind of cool to see. The Shadow Realm, which we get to see, which is, I think, regardless of issues you might have with it, again, Taika Waititi brings this really cool visual look to it, where you have this almost the black and white thing element. The Shadow Realm, which actually was first popped up in Strange Tales number 79 of the comics. Also, the one of the tour ships that they take has the Cocktail and Dreams neon sign, which was actually from the Tom Cruise film Cocktail, and that's the name of the bar he opens at the end of the movie. So it's kind of funny. We get a little Tom Cruise Easter egg in there.
That's hilarious. I didn't even catch that.
We get in the Thor comics, there was like a pantheon of gods, so we got sort of like a pantheon version of that with all these different gods when we meet Zeus. And we get a lot of versions of different gods. We get the Aztec god. We get of course, Maori god, which of course, Taika Waititi is Marian. I don't know, I'm pronouncing that, but anyway, that's the god that from like New Zealand stuff. We get the sun god Ra, which is probably why he didn't show up in Moon Knight. Maybe we get the Mayan god. We get the Panther goddess from Black Panther, and of course we get the dumpling god Bao. We also get Korg's Cronin god.
Yes, I saw that. It was hilarious.
Who has a throne of scissors, which, if you remember the Thor Ragnarok, there was a joke where Cronin made a rock paper scissors joke. So it's even funnier that the Cronin god, he has like the Iron Throne from Game of Thrones, but it's all scissors. Let's see. Of course, when we get the full Hemsworth, when he rips the outfit off of Thor, he has a tattoo on his back of R.I.P. Loki, rest in mischief. Let's see. Also, when they fly out of Zeus's realm, they pass by two celestials. Let's see. I think there's one's called the Mad Celestial and the other's called the Celestial Garden. So, Gardener, I'm sorry. When they're flying through space, they see space dolphins. And actually, in the comics, Thor did encounter space sharks. So I guess that maybe that's that version of that in the movie world. Let's see. The little girl who played Gorr the Butcher's daughter is actually Hemsworth's daughter, India Rose. So again, another one of his children who played it. And of course, if you didn't go take a pre-break when the end credits popped up, if you stay for the end credits, we get our first version of Hercules, played by Brett Goldstein of Ted Lasso.
Yes.
Which there was already rumors about that. So and which actually I guess in the comics later in the comics doesn't
Roy
he
effing
he-
Kent. Sorry, I had to
doesn't
say
he
that.
doesn't he team up with Thor? Doesn't he become buddies with Thor? I guess in the
Yeah,
comics.
quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, they switch off. They fight. They team up. They fight. They
Yeah.
team up.
Their fights are usually boisterous affairs where they're not. I can drink more than you. Oh yeah, and then they bust each other's heads open with mugs or kind of.
Well, we did get the James Bond thing where Thor will returns. So maybe he'll pop up in the next one. And of course, the second end credit sequence, we get the return of Heimdall, which everybody loves that character. And also we find out that Jane Foster went to Valhalla, which some people think may bleed into her becoming Valkyrie.
Which she is now in the comics. So
in the comics. So again, that's a way that they can bring her back. So she's not just because she's in this dead realm doesn't mean that she's gone. So anyway, there's probably a lot of other things, but there's a lot of the main ones that I read about.
Oh man, does anybody have any that stand out? Or are we ready to get into the full?
Let's go for it.
Let's
do it.
get into the meat and potatoes.
All right. Well, as far as meat potatoes go, when you said meat, the first thing I thought of was when the goats reacted to the we can always eat the goats. And I was like, the goats were my favorite. I love the goats. And like when they took off, when they landed on the little moon planet, oh my God, it's hilarious. Every time they squealed, I was like, I'm down with this. This is my jam. I love it. So I guess I'll seg that into the comedy. We talked about the comedy being kind of perhaps overplayed, right? But I liked it. So anybody want to jump in about the comedy? Christopher, do you want?
Well, I think you can tell a Taika Waititi movie, you know, sometimes by the weird things that pop up or ideas that pop up, but a lot of it's in the dialogue. And I think there's a playfulness to the dialogue, which some people said they did improvise a little bit, I guess, in certain scenes. So you might find that probably less so much with Gorr the Butcher, but I'd say a lot of the dialogue sequences were really funny. And because even just like, because I think when you're writing normal dialogue, you're not getting to the midst of like calling out yourself, or even like where like Jane Foster trying to like, oh, is that a good, you know, is that a good saying, I should say, you know, or just, you know, even the rule of threes when it comes to humor, where they'll mention certain things, or even Korg, or even like if there's funny ideas where it's mentioned, it's going to pop up later, because then we get to see Korg actually playing out.
Making Korg babies.
Making other Korg babies near lava.
What was the guy's name? It was hilarious. He had the little mustache. It was crazy.
I can't remember, but yeah, I mean,
or something like that.
but I think that's what makes it kind of unique. You know, it's a Taika Waititi with they have like these really sort of funny conversations. They calling out each other as characters. There's always a kind of weird awkwardness in certain situations, you know. I mean, and even just turning his weapon into a comedic sidekick, you know, because anytime that Stormbreaker would just like, he'd be like, you know, Stormbreaker would start getting jealous when he was thinking about Mjolnir, and then all of a sudden you see peeking like an evil girlfriend or something, and those moments just I just laughed so hard, you know. Or even like when we get to Zeus, who, I'm sorry, you know, Russell Crowe is just having a ball, you know, just, you know, when he holds his little dress and he comes down. I mean,
that's crazy.
I literally even though, you know, the story's not as compact or as singular as the Ragnarok, there's this really funny moments where it's just they're just having fun, and you can sort of see that on the screen, whether it's the actors. And I think the only person that's playing it straight is Gorr the Butcher. But I think, I think a lot of times your best comedies are where the villain is playing it straight. That's why Lou Costello, when the monsters, you know, the Frankenstein monster, Evan Costello. That's the reason it's so funny, because the villains are playing it straight, you know. And you have all the other people that are sort of reacting to certain things. But yeah, I mean, even just simple things. And when he busts the vendor machine, and
somebody left the door open.
Yeah, somebody left the door open, and here's all this candy. you know.
So Chad, you mentioned this went it kind of took it into two different directions. So, and that kind of upset it for you.
Well, I don't know what to think about it. I feel like the comedy is what Thor is now in the MCU. So I think Zeus would have been a better villain for Thor somehow, or a better foil for Thor than Gorr would have been. Gorr, if anybody that's read that series of Thor issues, Gorr was one of the best Marvel villains they've come out since Doctor Doom, I thought.
Wow, that's huge.
And his storyline is very serious. They stuck really close to what his story was in the movie. It's just that every time something serious with him would happen, it's 5 seconds later somebody's making a joke, and it sort of just wipes all that out. And I feel like that worked very well in Ragnarok, because anybody that's read a Jack Kirby comic know that it's just nutso wacky ideas and concepts and stuff like that, and it worked very well for that. I just don't think the story of Gorr the God Butcher lent itself to comedy.
So you're saying that Taika Waititi is more of a Lee and Kirby director than an Aaron and his cast of artists,
because that comedy and everything really worked well, and that's why I love Ragnarok. Don't get me wrong. The story of Hela and everything like that, even though that was a serious, it was handled very well in Ragnarok, and there was emotion involved in that. That was Thor's sister, and he doubted himself, and he had to overcome his fear of her, but in this one, he's just played as a doofus.
Yeah,
and Thor, he's not a doofus. Thor's not a doofus. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, it feels like they pulled the character back a little bit from what he's grown.
It's okay for him to be funny and and that kind of thing, but I think the seriousness of that story, and even so of Jane and her story being of the mighty Thor, it wasn't. I don't know. I feel like there were beats missing
in that storyline.
In that storyline as well. I think that, like I said, I think that could have been its own Thor movie.
Yeah, you could have had her and Zeus, and then had Hercules and Gorr in the next one.
Yeah,
Slatman, that's kind of what you're thinking, because you were thinking that the mighty Thor got underused.
Oh yeah. I have not read the Gorr comic line, so I don't have anything to add to that. But I just feel like Mighty Thor was underutilized, and I don't know. It didn't have the emotional weight, I think, that they expected it to have.
I feel like that's where some of the stuff may have gotten cut. That and that's part of the tonal issues, because every time we got to her and talking about that particular element, it's a downer. So, and they obviously didn't want as much of that.
Well, that was one of the things I was talking about, like the vending machine. They're in there talking about her cancer, and she's in stage 4 cancer, and she's dying, but somebody didn't put a door on this refrigerator. When he comes in, it kind of deflated the drama in that scene, I thought, or I felt.
Well, it didn't affect me, because I've had family members die of cancer, and so there has to be some level of humor in there. Otherwise, you're just going to make everybody a downer. And I will say, Ragnarok did not make me cry. This film made me cry. I was wiping tears away.
Well, I agree with you. There should be, but I don't think it was done well, is what I'm trying to say. I don't think it was. That was there does need to be comedy in serious situations like that. I just feel like that's done a lot in Taika Waititi's movies, where it's just you take all the piss out of the moment when with the comedy? Can we just have a moment where they just share a moment together? Does there have to be comedy in there? I didn't feel like it did. I just felt like that was such an emotional moment for the two of them, and sort of helped their relationship unfold a little bit more. It really didn't need that little bit of comedy in there. It felt off to me.
Well, that part didn't feel off to me. But I think I do feel like there's stuff missing, because I think we even saw behind the scenes stuff where Jane Foster's floating up in the air when she become, when when it starts shaking or whatever. So there feels to be a lot of different side or part story elements that were cut out of it that probably could have fleshed that out a little bit more to where it didn't feel so concentrated, I guess, on the comedy aspect of it. But yeah, I mean, I think that's always the hard thing, is because I mean, literally they joked that there was a 4-hour cut of it, but it just had a lot of the jokes were too flat in the 4-hour cut.
Yeah. When we go in to see movies, we carry our own baggage in with us when we watch them. And so that's why Chris's experience is a little bit different than mine. I just think some studio exec said more comedy because that worked in Ragnarok, and that's what we got.
Yeah. Although I will say, I don't know. As much as we're sitting here nitpicking, I'm sure there's a lot of kids that are probably like love that whole fight thing at the end, because it kind of empowers young kids. And I kind of like that. I mean, I
love that part.
Even at first I was like, dude, you're gonna get these kids killed. What are you doing, Thor? and then when he gave them the power of Zeus, I was like, oh my God, that's where the humor came in, because I was like, what's the little girl with the stuffed animal gonna do?
Oh my God, that was great.
That worked in a way to me. I don't feel like I'm nitpicking, because I feel like it's an overall issue with the whole movie.
Yeah, and with Gorr as well at times. I mean, because Gorr was funny in a slightly different way. I mean, he wasn't as slapsticky funny, but when he's delivering some of those lines, like right in front of the kids, even though it's scary, there's some humor in how he's saying it and how he's acting. Christian Bale is having a great time in this role, which I was a little concerned about, because I don't know. I think of Christian Bale as a little bit of a stuffed shirt. He's still talented, right? But he also comes with a little bit different kind of approach to film than what the MCU is known for, right? And I think he fit in great, and he really brought some fun to this character and emotion, and he really
he nailed that. He nailed that part. Every time he was on screen, you're wondering what he's going to do next. He was so unstable, and
I wish he just wasn't like the little ghost guy in the back of the scene for a lot of it. Like the whole thing where I felt that wasted him. But I want to circle back around to Jane Foster real quick, because SLATTMAN, I want to get your opinion, because we kind of stole that away from you. But what do you think of Natalie Portman as the Mighty Thor and this version of Jane Foster?
I thought Natalie Portman did a good job with it. It was fun to see, and but again, I just have to kind of circle back. I felt like she was underutilized, and there was more to that character, more to that storyline, that just it felt like there was something missing from it.
Yeah, it felt like they didn't know how to have both Tessa Thompson as Valkyrie and Jane Foster, Mighty Thor, together, right? And not. And because it felt like they took what would be one character's story, not storyline, but film time, right? Time on screen, and had to split it up between those two. And I felt like that was a bit of a disservice. And
because of that, I actually felt like Tessa Thompson felt kind of like she was kind of just doing it for the paycheck. I didn't really feel that energy or that enjoyment that I got from her in Ragnarok. She was kind of a flat line for me in this movie.
A little bit. I mean, I still loved her being there, and when it came down to it, I was glad she was part of the as Guardians of the Galaxy, if you will, Chad.
Yes.
But at the same time, yeah, it felt like, you know, she was kind of relegated to supporting the supporting characters.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I guess that kind of adds to the whole scatteredness of parts of it, because it almost like didn't really know where. I mean, yeah, we usually have to follow where Thor goes, but it never could figure out where the focus is going to be, you know. But I will say, for this to be a comedy, you got to have balls to start it off with a kid dying. You don't see that in the MCU very often. So
There you go.
at least they had some guts in sort of being able to tell a story that people are like, you can't start a movie like that. But I mean, but that is the heart of the whole reason why that makes that villain so good, is because he has a reason. You relate to that. If you're put in that situation, you probably would do the same thing, you know, the death of a child, you know, and when people aren't being helped, when, you know, and also the whole thing about gods and, you know, how why have you forsaken me type moments people have, you know, there's that aspect of it. Well, and regardless of the scatteredness, I think at least we do have a little bit of arc with Thor's character where he like realizes I need to be more of a caring god as opposed to this person just like willy-nilly knocks palaces down thinking he's helped people when they call him the god of destruction.
Yeah, I thought that was a little bit of, I don't know if that followed the character from what we saw in the, you know, the previous movies, you know, including the Avengers. But anyway, let's move on from that and let's talk about some of the surprises, how the movie ends, and some of the post-credit scenes. Starting off with the true meaning of Love and Thunder, which I did not, you know, I didn't see that coming, and I was really happily surprised that Love, in this case, is actually the daughter of Gorr that now Thor is foster father for, right? A foster parent. So, and he's not actually, because you think in the scene he's taking her to school, right? But he's schooling her in a different way. He's taking her out on the planet to, you know, fight battles together, and they're known as Love and Thunder. I love that. Am I alone?
The best 2-hour title cards
there you go.
Ever.
There you go.
Yeah. I love that too. I wasn't expecting it. I was not. And just to see that made me smile. Just to see those two rushing into battle and just the way Thor was taught as a boy. And now he's teaching his daughter. That just, that made me smile.
And I would say that 99.9% of the people watching the film have no idea that that's actually his daughter.
No, I didn't. I didn't even know when I watched it. Yeah.
No, I didn't know until later. You have to be kind of a geek like us to even find out about it. But Chad, I want to get back to you again with this, because this is something unique to the MCU. This is not based on a comic choice, right?
No. Thor has no daughters in the comics. So this was a step forward, though. I think maybe now we've had enough of Thor trying to find himself and who he is and that kind of thing, and just have him smashing monsters with Mjolnir. That's what I want. That's
and
Thor.
He's got Mjolnir back. He's got Mjolnir back.
Yeah, now he's got Mjolnir back, and
she's got.
Yeah.
Yep, I like that. So of course Gorr, his final wish was to bring. We talked about that, but we didn't talk about eternity. We really didn't get into that in the Easter eggs, did we, Christopher? We get to see eternity, which is a huge deal for the cosmic side of Marvel, and there are other cosmic beings seen as statues. Chad, did you catch some of those?
Maybe not.
It was Death was one of them.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to go over all of them here, but it was just like that whole thing was really cool. And there was a half second when you see the little things coming, the shape of eternity.
Yeah, I thought it was Galactus.
I was like, Galactus!
Yeah.
No, it's eternity. But and some people actually in the audience still thought it was Galactus. They thought eternity was Galactus. And now I could hear like murmurs of people trying to explain what eternity was. But I thoroughly enjoyed how they represented eternity. Eternity is a difficult character to do.
So did I. In the comics, he talks. I like they didn't make him talk. In this one, he just sort of manipulated things without talking.
Well, he's the ultimate visual effect that you'd only see in a comic panel, and so to see a visual representation is kind of, it's a little bit jarring, and you're like, are they really going to go for that? And I think it works for what it is, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it helped that there was a statue of him first, so we get used to the idea before we actually see, him. And I love that they used that. I think it helped that they used scenery, if you will, that we're familiar with, because the landscape outside of Eternity felt like when they would get the was not the Mind Stone. Which stone was it? When they would get the
Space Stone?
Is it which one?
Soul Stone, was
the Soul Stone. Yes, when they would get the Soul Stone, it felt very reminiscent of that. With the layer of thin water, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's get into the post credits, and then we'll wrap things up. Zeus did not die. I kind of knew he wasn't going to, but it was still funny.
He was cranky, though. He was cranky.
Still hilarious that he died and fell off his little thing. That was so great. But he, we get introduced to Hercules, and it's Roy Cat. And I didn't even know about the rumor, because I've been like staying away from all the rumors. I didn't want to know. I was so thrilled about this. I said, like, who would be, because I was like, what do you do? The Rock? What do you do? Who because it's got to go up. But this works. I don't know how it's CGI a little bit muscles now, but it works. I think he's the perfect guy to play Hercules. The Marvel Hercules, right?
We'll see.
You're not on board.
I've never watched Ted Lasso or anything like that, so I don't know anything much about him. But
everybody's
excited about it, so that's good.
There was people that whooped and hollered in my theater when he popped up. So
he's definitely the grumpiest man on TV.
I'm just glad they showed Hercules. I said there's no way they're going to have Zeus and all these guys and not have Hercules.
They're going to start pulling the blade thing where they hear him off screen. Hercules, yes.
I mean, it's sad he only got 2 words, yes, Father. But at the same time, it was just, oh my God.
I mean, can you ask for more from a stinger, though?
It was a great stinger. It was one of the better stingers. I like it better than the last one, although it was great to see Heimdall again. And thank you for taking care of my son and the kids. That was actually heartfelt. And her reaction. I thought that scene played out extraordinarily well. Even if they don't even do anything with it. It just really felt
closure.
Like that's a great way to put it. It's closure to Jane's character. And but it still gives us an opportunity to see more of her in some fashion that they see fit. So,
and we haven't seen Heimdall since Infinity War?
Well, since he got slain, he didn't get to go to dust, little sparkly dust. He should.
Although at least we know his name, as opposed to when Korg is like, when that guy died and that guy died with the whatever the people. What are the other people with I don't even remember what their names are.
The three, the Warriors 3,
the Warrior 3 or whatever.
All these guys, whoever they were.
Which is him making fun of the fact that people didn't like that they killed them off so quickly in Ragnarok. So.
Yes.
And Korg face. We have to mention Korg face.
Do we have to mention Korg face?
Just
that
the
was
face.
Weird.
Yeah.
That was weird.
Which, by the way, that Cronin that Thor breaks up in Ragnarok, I guess he's still alive. If his face is still there, right?
Yeah, I guess it just comes back together, I guess. I don't know how that works.
I kind of wonder if they were originally going to kill off Korg and they got some bad backlash, so they kind of stuck him back in the movie.
Well, but it also saves you extra effects if he's just a face.
Yeah.
Although I did love the part where he's on the back of Valkyrie.
Yeah.
And her hair rope, a mustache. I mean, things like that are just pure Taika Waititi. There's really no reason to have him riding on the back of her head.
Or when he's singing karaoke and Valkyrie's like sipping the drink and holding the microphone up to.
Yeah.
It's all for the gag. It's all for the gag. All right, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Let's give our final thoughts, our score 1 to 5, and our favorite scenes. Slatman, sir, you are up first.
So I'm gonna give this a 3.75. I think it's a fun movie, but I think it is a flawed movie. It is enjoyable, but it's kind of a tale of two halves, to pull from what Chad said earlier. There's the half that I really, really, really like, and then there's the half that I just kind of like on. And I think it's full of questionable decisions. The stuff I really, really liked really elevated above the most of the other Thor movies, though. I think Chris Hemsworth did a great job. I really, really, really loved Christian Bale in this movie. And there are certain set pieces and certain like fight scenes, or certain in certain scenes that work really, really, really well. But unfortunately, there are other scenes in between them that I feel don't work as well. And I think a lot of that is probably because there's probably like at least another 30 minutes of movie that got cut that would probably help flesh those scenes out.
I hope we get to see that too.
I doubt it, because Taika Waititi came out and said that director's cuts are bad for the industry, and directors need to be held in check. So don't hold your breath.
Well, at least we'll get the cutscenes. Maybe we'll get the cutscenes.
Yeah. But my favorite scene is probably the during the attack of New Asgard. The fight with Thor and Gorr, when Gorr is like intimidating him and like weaving in and out through the shadows and stuff. I thought that was a really cool, really, really well done, really imaginative. And I don't know, Christian Bale was like the best part of this movie, hands down.
It's hard to say he isn't, except for maybe Zeus. No, I'm kidding. Christopher G. Moore, sir, your final thoughts, your score, and favorite scene.
I love Zeus. I don't know. I mean, I'm glad that Release allowed to have some kind of goofiness in the MCU, and I think this definitely, as much as Taika Waititi thinks that a director's cut would not be restraining directors, he feels a little bit unrestrained in this film, and I feel like there's definitely some bits and pieces that are missing, almost like pieces of Mjolnir. It doesn't form the full hammer, but it's still, there's enough bits and pieces that are humorous, and I have laughed more during this than I've done any other MCU film, I'd say, because there's just a lot of really funny bits here and there. But I can understand the tone issue that Chad's talking about. I mean, even the part where he meets up with that one god, and there's like a flower person. There's all these weird beings and stuff. It's kind of a weird, two different tones just in that one scene. But at the same time, also just goes into the sort of the weirdness and the floweriness of gods in general. Like, But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I mean, I would have loved, like Slightman was talking about, would have loved to seen more of the Jane Foster side of things, even though we got bits and pieces of it. But yeah, I think visually there's some really cool stuff they do in this. Just, whether it's just the use of color or the non-use of color, Shadow Realm is just such a cool freaking thing. And I love that we're getting a little bit more horror elements, going from Multiverse of Madness to this, which, regardless of it being majority comedy, we do have that creepy horror element.
With the spider cage,
those monsters and stuff, which supposedly their kids came up with the ideas of what the monsters look like, and he just took those drawings to the special effects guys that created them based on so kids' ideas are even more creepier than ours. But yeah, I loved a lot of humor. I think Russell Crowe's hilarious as Zeus. And I will say it, there's a couple of parts that made me cry. So even though it felt a little bit scattered, there was enough there to sort of get me in the heart and made me smile at the very end and smile in different parts. Because it's just a fun movie, regardless of the issues that we have with it. It's still a fun movie overall. So I would give it a 4 out of 5. I enjoyed it. It's not as good as Ragnarok, but I'd probably like it better than other MCU movies in general, just because of the sense of fun and just taking a little bit of chances in parts. As for favorite scene, I'm I'm gonna go with what I call the Jean-Claude Van Damme scene.
Oh wow!
Because he's fighting, and then he does that little split between the two, and I felt like Jean-Claude Van Damme would have done that. And I don't know, I just love that because I think I think that's the one thing Chad's wanting to say, just more of the badassery of Thor, and we get in that scene where he's just like knocking people left and right, blowing this up or that down, and then when he does, but between those two weird looking furry creatures, elf creatures or whatever they were, I every time I think about that scene, it makes me laugh because it's just I was like, am I watching? I'm watching a space Viking doing a split between two weird vehicles on this crazy planet with blue people. To
the song of Guns N' Roses.
Two Guns N' Roses song. and lots of great. By the way, I don't think we talked about the soundtrack as much. There's a couple of actually Guns N' Roses shirts and posters that show up in different scenes in the movie as well. But yeah, the UC music, of course. Although unlike a lot of things, there's actually a lot of Guns N' Roses music, but that's not a bad thing for something like this.
Nope. Yeah, and Heimdall's son Astrid wants to be called Axel, so hey, they even brought it in to the actual story. All right, Chad. Final thoughts. Score. Favorite scene.
Final thoughts are I enjoyed watching this film despite my reservations about some of it. The whole thing, I would have liked to have seen some more adventures with the Guardians and Thor, and so I would have liked to have seen some more of that. And Christian Bale was, to me, just held my attention for this movie greatly. I was so invested in why he was doing what he was doing and the reason why, and which leads into my favorite scene. Was even though we knew why he was doing it, we didn't know what he wanted, or I didn't really, until he got there to eternity and they explained what would happen when he went and got the axe there. And so when he finally did that and you realized what he wanted from eternity and got that final chance to be with his daughter again, I cried at that. That was just a very emotional, very well acted scene, and he made that character come to life from the comics. So yeah, that was definitely my favorite scene, even though the whole fight at the beginning with the with the split and all that was a cool scene as well. I'm going to give it a 3.75, and that's mostly due to Christian Bale and his performance. I was really moved by it.
There you go. I can appreciate that. Yeah, because I would say Christian Bale as Gorr is up there as definitely one of the best Marvel villains. Because Marvel has a villain problem. Yeah. And I think people keep forgetting that Loki was a villain first. Loki's probably also one of the better villains.
Yeah.
Even though now he's an anti-hero-ish kind of thing. But anyway, okay. It's hot. It's summer. This is a great reason to go to the theater and have a good time and laugh and see spectacle and hear good music and have the opportunity to get emotionally involved, as we've said here with the story. I think the box office for this reflects that. It's done really strong box office. I mean, it's kind of it's torn about which how you want to report on it, because of they were fighting with expectation. They didn't know where to put this, and it was all over the place. But given the recent history and where we're at, and the fact that it did bring in more than Ragnarok did on its beginning. Of course, Ragnarok was a surprise, right? Because but anyway, regardless, I think this is a great theatrical film. It's great Marvel stuff. It's got a lot of characters. It's bringing in some new ones. It's having a lot of fun. It has some great surprises, great laughs, great Easter eggs, and most importantly, it sticks the landing. It ends, you feel good at the end of the movie, right? Even though, even with the reservations, Chad, right? At the end of the movie, you feel good, right? The whole Thor and Love and Thunder aspect of it, and the two stingers, you feel satisfied. You feel, you rewarded for sitting there for 2 hours. It works, and that's important. From a theatrical experience aspect of the film, and I love this, and I loved it. I'm giving it a 4.5. Now, Thor Ragnarok got a 5, so it's definitely below it. It's definitely miles ahead of the first two Thors. Although there's reasons since those came out that both of those have become better with age. Both of them. I will say you're on mute, Chad. I don't know what you're saying, but both of them have become better with age.
Yeah, I like both of them. I like all the Thor films.
Yeah, but there's some reasons why the second one has become better later. But we won't get into that. But anyway, all right. So my favorite scene. Oh my God. Okay. Anytime the goats are on my favorite scene. So there's that. We'll put that in a corner. If not that, what in the trailers it had me a little concerned, but in context of the movie, when they land on that little teeny globe and it's black and white, and the only time you see color is when they start using like Milner or some of the things come around, and you start seeing like shades of color come in, and that was so well done, and visually it was a treat. And it was a bit, I would suggest it's a bit risky for Marvel to do that, and even Taika to do that in the middle of this movie, but it was that isolated out, it was handled with such mastery and care and pacing and lighting and everything. It just really worked. And there's great action in it. There's some funny bits. Okay, it starts with the goats going face first into the planet.
Well, it's funny that you don't know the scope of the planet until they hit it, because normally you go into the atmosphere, but there's no freaking atmosphere because it's like a little tiny rock.
Just a rock.
So it made for a very funny moment, because I think we all like, what? They just crash into it.
They crash into it and scream.
Yeah, anytime the Pete scream, people were cracking up in my theater.
I died.
Oh, by the way, did you pay attention to when the Guardians were fighting and the camera goes around it? What was happening to Kraglin? He evidently can't know how. He doesn't know how to use the whistle.
He had it up his nose. What's that? He was like, ah.
Which in slow motion makes it even funnier.
See, it felt like I wondered. I felt like James Gunn had like a hand on like any time the Guardians were on screen.
He probably did.
Because the thing up the nose felt very James Gunny, not Taika Waititi.
I'll give you that.
Yeah.
I felt like I kind of felt like the way. So there's so little of the Guardians in this. I think some people are going to be upset, but it felt like it was like, oh crap, I gotta do these Guardians. Let's get them in here and get them out of here. I got stuff to do. Because it felt like it's like, get them out. I wonder if there's going to be the flip side of it in Guardians 3.
I don't know. I know they had conversations between the two directors, had conversations about things, because I know he was going to bring in stuff that he would have to bring up in his film. So
yeah,
because the goats come back.
Oh god! But like Mantis had like a decoration on her forehead that was new, and there was a couple, and Groot was a little different, a little bigger.
Pratt had different facial hair too, so they were all seemed a little bit different.
Yeah. So something's happening. All right. Well, there you go. That's our review for Thor: Love and Thunder. Leave your comments down below. And it won't be too much longer when we find out what Phase 5, really, right? Phase 5 is going to be. San Diego Comic-Con's coming at the end of this month, and rumor has it they're going to reveal. Well, they have to, because we're at the end of this one and we don't know. I mean, we have some aspect. We know some of it, right? We know. Well, we won't get into all that. We know some, but we don't know all. So there's a lot to share with us.
I kind of wish we just didn't have phases anymore. I wish they would just tell different stories with different characters, not try to connect everything. I mean, not go. Well, not go DC wild, but go not so be so stringent to everything. But
I think this. Well, you know what's funny is I think this one has, and I think people aren't as receptive to it. It's really odd. I agree with you, but at the same time, that's kind of what Phase 4 has done.
Well, Phase 4 has not had any really
through point, right?
They haven't really connected with people, I guess, and it's connected with people. Like, I love Multiverse of Madness. That's my favorite MCU movie ever now. Right. But there's a lot of people that didn't connect, and there's a lot of people who think it's horrible, and there's people that are saying thing about this, or
Shang-Chi,
or they say it's too woke, or do all these different things, all these words and stuff, trying to find specific issues with it. So I don't know. For some reason, it doesn't feel as connected, which I think is a good thing. But I guess maybe for some people, it's not.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I mean, to be fair, the first the Phase 1 didn't feel connected until Avengers. So
well, once Avengers happened, it all felt connected.
Yeah.
It was almost like a happy accident.
Well, there was connectivity behind the scenes that we didn't know about, but yeah, it didn't feel as connected until you put everything together, and it's like, oh, I see what you did there. So maybe there'll be something.
Yeah, 6 years from now, they're gonna be looking back on Phase 4 and being like, "That was so smart," just like we did back when after the Avengers, and going, "That was so smart."
They kind of had us when Nick Fury showed up at the end of Iron Man. Come on, it was kind of a done deal.
The stories kind of stood on their own.
They did, very much so.
Yeah,
and we won't even go where the Incredible Hulk went. It was just like, whatever. But
there's a weird connectivity now with that.
It's so weird, but yeah, it isn't. Well, I mean, there are reasons to like it, but at the same time, it just feels like this redheaded stepchild. Anyway, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Chad, Christopher, thank you for joining me. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you. Always fun.
Screaming go.
Let's go. Let's say good night.
Good night.
Good night.